Welcome to another episode of the Village Boy podcast. It is your host, Trez. Today, we are touching on the topics that have been in on the social media platforms about the arrivals of the white Afrikaans, South Africans, the so called refugees fleeing persecution. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, said there's a genocide happening in South Africa and he's rushing to save the white people. There's a genocide for white people in South Africa, and he's essentially rushing and providing the United States as home to these fleeing Afrikaans, Afrikaners, white South Africans. As it's cultured on the Village Boy podcast, we get into this conversation and look into the realities of the claims that have been made as we analyze that conversation. Because on the right, it's all passion. White people are getting abused, white people are getting killed. Let's get them out of that African hot mess and bring them to America. These are white farmers. Let's give them land in Iowa, Idaho, Florida, California, what have you, so that they can continue to flourish. The question is it the same treatment that is offered to other countries that have genocide? Are the people rushed to America and ushered a welcome statement by the president, given land, given resources to start life? Is it the same treatment that was given to the people of Rwanda? And so what I found out is that that's not the treatment that happened to the people of Rwanda that had a genocide, that the people were being killed. It's not the same treatment that happened to the people in Myanmar in the genocide that's actually still going on. So you happen to see a difference when there's a perceived treatment or maltreatment for white people anywhere. There's that rush, that attention, that special preferential treatment accorded to white folks that is not given to other people. And so part of this segment is introducing my new segment called My Conversation with Grok. Now, what is Grok? Grok is a large language model and chatbot platform developed by Elon Musk, whom, if you guys are following me, know I'm not the biggest fan of Elon Musk, but I do like Grok. I do like the platform's interactive response. And why am I starting this new segment? I found out that having a conversation with Grok is freer, it's honest. I'm not having to deal with somebody who's leaning right, and I'm not having to deal with somebody who's leaning left. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask, and where best to ask those questions than on the platform like Grok. And I would be able to share the answers with you guys, the village audience. And we're going to bring Grok into this conversation immediately as we break down Trump's approach of bringing in white South Africans. I was very direct. And so I asked Grok, does America has always prioritized white immigration over colored immigration. I like colored better because it's historic. People of color sounds very nuanced, very passive. Colored is America's history, and I like to use that. So I asked, I stated, America has always prioritized white immigration over colored immigration. And folks on the right would have that tendency to say, but America is a white country. So there is a need to prioritize white immigration over colored immigration. As if white is not a color, but that's not the conversation for today. But is America really a white country? When you say white countries, you're thinking of Europe, England, France, Ireland, Italy, Scotland, European countries, Eastern Europe, Europe, Southern Europe. These are white countries. If you do the DNA, you don't even have to do the DNA. If you ask every white American, their origins, it starts and ends with Europe. None of them starts and ends with America. Irish American, German American, Italian American, Scottish American. President Trump, for example, is German Scottish American. On his mother's side, he is a first generation, a second generation. His mom was born in Scotland. She was a naturalized citizen. His father was a second generation American because his grandfather, Donald Trump's grandfather, was born in Germany. So white Americans know exactly where they come from, their roots, their ancestral tree. See, if I just run up to any random black American and I'm like, where are you from? They're not going to know. They have to do a DNA test that will pinpoint exactly where they may have come from. But let's not deviate. Let's go into what Grok told me in my on my question based on America prioritizing white immigration over colored immigration. Grok says it's a loaded claim, and the reality is more complex. US immigration policy has historically favored certain groups, often tied to race, but it's not a simple white over colored story. Let's break it down, shall we? Early on, from the 1790 Naturalization Act, citizenship was restricted to free white persons. So, America, up to this point, had a preference for white people. And in 1790, black people were not even considered people, they were considered property, right? So there was a preference for white people. The black Africans that came to America were considered property and belonged to the owners. Okay. The 1790 Naturalization Act set a tone, a racial tone. The 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act banned Chinese immigrants explicitly. So America did not want Chinese people to come here. They preferred white people. And later laws like this 1907 Gentleman's Agreement curbed Japanese immigration. Again, so if it's not Chinese, we don't want Japanese, we don't want Africans, we just want European. The 1924 Immigration Act used quotas heavily favoring Western Europeans, caping immigration from less desirable regions like Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. These policies undeniably prioritize white immigrants, particularly from Northern and Western Europe, while restricting or excluding non whites. But Grok says context matters. Economic needs, geopolitical and cultural attitudes shaped these laws. For example, the 1917 Immigration Act barred most Asian immigration, but Mexican laborers were exempted to meet agricultural demands. If you just try to understand this, I'll put it in context. When the Native Americans, the Aboriginal Americans were in this country, and European immigrants, explorers or colonizers, settlers, were roaming and wandering the world and found the new world, the new lands. They came in here, found Indians, found that this country was blessed and well endowed and had a lot of potential. But they also realized that it's going to be labor intensive to develop the land, to cultivate the land, to bring to reality the ideas they had for this land they just found. Now, one would think that a white country, a white exclusive country, and these are white men, they will go back to Europe and bring the laborers from Europe. They will go to Europe and say, hey, we found a new country out west, potential, abundance potential, but we're going to need the men and women that are going to be willing to tilt the soil so we can create an extension of the white family. But see, they never did that. They went past Europe and went straight to Africa and found labor in Africa. So they stole Africans and brought them to America without their will. They never decided that they wanted to come to America. And these Africans were used as the labor force to develop America. So, America has a history of priding itself as a white country, but the labor force used to develop that white country is a colored labor force. See, Europeans cannot say this. England cannot say we used colored labor to build England. France cannot say, well, they're stealing African resources, but France cannot say we used colored labor to build France. Spain cannot say we used colored labor to build Spain. The Nordic countries, Scandinavian countries, they don't have a history of colored labor that took part in the development of those countries. So those are exclusively white countries. So, but America cannot really call itself a white country if they have made sure that the luxury is for white and the labor is for colored. So, America is a country of immigrants, even though blacks, and Native Americans are not immigrants. But it is a country of immigrants because America has always prioritized. Till this day, America is shipping its call center jobs to the Philippines. America is shipping its manufacturing jobs to the Chinese. America is constantly ensuring that affordable labor is done by mostly non-white folks. I mean, you cannot ship your agricultural sector. If it was possible, America would have shipped its agricultural sector to the Mexicans, to the Hondurans, to the El Salvadorians, and maybe why not to Africa? So they have to bring these people in here and let them do the work. Let's keep reading up. The 1965 Immigration Act was a turning point, scrapping national origin quotas and prioritizing family reunification and skills. Oh, so now they wanted to put family together and you needed to have a certain level of skills to come to America. Now they had secured the very large demographic of white majority and to figure out it was going to stay like that for a very long period of time. And so they could bring portions of other people to come do the work. The white population had grown in 1965 and was not a threat. So this 1965 Immigration Act led to a surge in immigration from Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Since then, most legal immigrants haven't been white. Of course. But why were people moving to America in the first place? Why were white people willing to move to America in the first place? Because of the downturn of the European economy. Most people were seeking opportunities in the new country because there was the possibility to find work and the American dream, get land, get resources, and start life. Whereas Europe was seeing a turn of a century sufferings and abject poverty. So they were running away from poverty into the new world. People were not leaving a rich country to go to an unknown place. That's usually not how immigration works. After reading all of this, I was not satisfied. And because Grok did mention, on the flip side, programs like the Diversity Visa Lottery started in 1990 aimed to boost immigration from underrepresented, often non-white countries, but these are small 50,000 visas annually against millions of applicants. And post 9/11 security measures like heightened vetting for Muslim majority countries add layers of bias that don't neatly fit a white versus color frame. So this is what Grok told me. And I was like, no, I'm a human. I'm allowed to be emotional. And I was like, no, Grok, I am the human here. I will be emotional. So I decided to push back. And I said, the DV program was initially created for the migration of Irish and Italians. I don't think Grok thought I knew that. However, when those economies bounced back, there was low turnout from these European countries, so Americans turned to colored people. That's what I told Grok. Haha. What did Grok say? The diversity visa program, origin and evolution are a bit more nuanced than that. But you're touching on a real shift. Let's unpack it. See why I like to have a conversation with Grok, no emotions. The DV program, established by the Immigration Act of 1990, wasn't explicitly created for the Irish and Italian, but it was heavily influenced by lobbying from Irish Americans, American group, and politicians like Senator Ted Kennedy. So Grok is trying to say that the Irish lobby for a program to bring Irish people into America because Ireland was going through a terrible economy, but America no longer had an open policy for Europeans at this point. So they needed some kind of legal measure to come into America. The Irish people that were already in America were hearing from their brothers on the European continent, the Irish back at home, and saying, we need a way out of this country. And the Irish lobby decided to create a program that will facilitate immigration of Italians and Irish. You can do the research. That was what they were pushing. They were not pushing for a universal entry of everybody. This was started by Irish lobbyists pushing the American government, and Ted Kennedy, blessed his soul, took the initiative to run with this. But before this DV program was approved, the Irish economy and the Italian economy bounced back. Life was getting better in Ireland. And the Irish were like, okay, I'd rather just stay at home, because most people will stay at home and not move to a strange country if the economic opportunities are available at home. People are migrating because they're looking for outlets to survive, to feed themselves, to start a family. And if those opportunities are available at home, nobody's going to move. This is why Americans are the least people to migrate to other countries, because America is really good economically. So Irish immigration had plummeted due to Irish economy recovery and the restrictive 1965 Immigration Act. Like I said, in 1965, they had cut the Immigration Act. So whites were not just going to stand up and just go to America as was done before. And now Ireland was bouncing back. So now there's this green card DV program that was meant for Irish and Italian folks, but those economies bounced back, and the people were not willing to come to America. But there was a policy, but they were not signing up to travel. The Irish immigration had plummeted due to Ireland's economic recovery. So right there. So they had to open this policy to the rest of the world. That's how come the rest of the world got on the table. And Grok is saying right here, I'll highlight this for those in the back. I'm right. You are right that Ireland and Italy's economy rebounded. Ireland's Celtic Tiger boom in the 1990s, Italy's post-industrial growth, interest in immigrating to the US waned. By mid-1990s, Irish and Italian applications for the DV lottery dropped significantly. Ireland's application fell from over 1 million in 1995 to under 100,000 by 2000 per State Department records. Europeans in general applied less as EU integrated, and economic stability made staying at home more appealing. Europeans no longer wanted to come to America because Europe now was a vibrant continent for them. They didn't want to leave home and travel to America. So you could not grow the white population anymore sourcing from Europe, because Europeans are okay at home. This shift opened the doors for non-European countries. Voila, there you have it. That is how every other person, because America was still producing work and they needed to have people do the work, so they had to look somewhere else. The DV program structure, excluding high immigration countries like Mexico, China, and India, meant Africa, Eastern Europe, and some Asian nations became the biggest beneficiaries. By the late 90s, countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Bangladesh, and Ukraine dominated the applicant pool. There you have it. That's how come every other country had representation. But see, with liberal policies and a whole host of other kinds of crazy policies, the white population is declining. And white folks are like, we need to be able to grow our numbers because they're saying that by 2050, whites will make up the minorities in America. Where else can we source more white folks from? Because white folks in Europe are not willing to migrate to America. You're not living happiness in Europe to go to the problems in America. America doesn't have universal health care. America just doesn't have structures that are going to be appealing to white Europeans. America is just not attractive enough for white Europeans to be able to keep up the numbers. And they cannot come out and say white folks should not get married to other races to keep the white race growing, because increasingly white folks are getting married to other races and creating non-white babies. And so the white population is declining at a rapid rate. And we look at the problem in South Africa where there's a large white contingent, and we're like, oh, look at that. They're suffering in there. Let's go rescue the white people and bring them to America. Does that sound like a plan? It sure does. And let's listen to the president say this himself. Because, I mean, he did say it.
To claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, right, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all recognitions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, you know, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something. But we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible.
So you heard what the president had to say. I'm not one of those who are just going to say, oh my God, racism. No, it's preference. For me, the way I look at it is preference, a preference for one group over another. I'm not going to brand it racism in this instance because he specifically says white farmers. And the reporter, the journalist, asked him, Sudan, people are getting killed. In the Congo, people are getting killed. I mean, the Trump administration is currently in the Congo negotiating a minerals deal, but not a peace deal, not a refugee deal. And this is in the backdrop of the Trump administration stopping every refugee program that would benefit colored people has been put on pause. However, there's an emergency right now that America is rushing to bring in white South Africans who they claim, this is an American claim, founded on nothing, that there's a genocide happening in South Africa. There is absolutely no genocide. South Africa, generally, it's a very violent country. South Africa has a violent history. So yes, there is a disproportionately attacks on white farmers, but it's not a genocide, right? It's not a genocide. So with that being said, we can go on to ask Grok, is there a white genocide in South Africa? And let's hear what Grok has to say. And Grok should say yes. This is what Grok has to say. The claim of a white genocide in South Africa, particularly targeting white farmers, has been widely debated and is often tied to discussions about farm attacks and land reforms. However, based on available evidence, the notion of a deliberate, systematic genocide against white South Africans is not supported by credible data or authoritative sources. But this is not satisfactory to the folks on the right. It is not an answer they want to hear. This is not what Republicans and conservative and MAGA crazy folks want to hear. They want to hear that, yes, white people are being persecuted in South Africa. White people are being killed for being white and being farm owners. And that's why we're rushing to bring them to America. This is what they want to hear. But there's no evidence that backs that. What is truly happening is a preference for more white folks, because white farmers are not leaving South Africa for America. People that own resources, white folks make up 7% of South Africa and own 80% of the land in South Africa. They're not giving up that to come to America and start afresh and be called asylees. Anybody that is on the program to come to America is not fleeing some kind of persecution. It's an outlet for them. They're going to a better options. These are hobos. These are people that had no credible jobs and no resources in South Africa. Because a rich white South African farmer is not leaving his farm to come be on benefits in America. They're not doing that. They're too wealthy. They're rich people. They own acres and acres and acres and acres of land, and they're the ones feeding most of Europe, most of South Africa. These are wealthy folks. They are not leaving South Africa. There's a town in South Africa called Orania. After the fall of the apartheid regime, a group of white South Africans decided to go create their own white-only community. They didn't want to be part of the larger reconstructive South Africa, which is what a lot of people have pushed in America, but the federal laws are not allowing for those kind of policies. Because if we had something like that, 99% of suburbs would be white-only communities. We would still have Jim Crow in America if federal law did not impede things like that. But in South Africa, they don't have laws that can stop communities like this from growing and thriving. If these are people that are persecuted, that are having a genocide, how are they building communities where they are thriving and excelling in themselves and farming? Let's listen to the CEO of Orania talk about his community.
Cent of money from the government, where we on a very practical level build a future for ourselves where we can be free and be safe and so on. On an idea level, Orania is to say Afrikaners of Orania believe them by definition is where you are not being ruled over and you do not rule over other people. And that is the essence of Orania. We have never tested the race of anyone applying to Orania. Nowhere in our policy is there any mention of race, of the color of people's skin and so on. There's a very strong emphasis on culture. And that's the first thing I want to say. Secondly,
there's a strong emphasis on culture, he says, but the culture is Eurocentric and Dutch related. Only white folks can be of that culture. So you don't have to expressly say white only. If you say the culture is Dutch only, if the soccer players that play on the Dutch team come to apply in Orania right now, the Black Dutch people come to apply in Orania right now to be as part of this country, of this small country within a country. Is this Orania going to accept them? No, they're not going to accept them. So he might say that there's no mention of race, but they're Black Dutch men and women. The entire half of the Dutch soccer team is made up of Black folk. They cannot be part of this community.
A group of people who came from Europe but who are in South Africa for 400 years now, part of this continent. We see ourselves as part of this continent. Thirdly, I want to say, as part of an easy answer, is anyone can apply, but the community has to accept who comes here. So that is also an honest answer. There's no person that I know of in Orania, and yet again we've never tested anyone's race or something like that. It's absurd. But there's no person that...
So to my Republican friends, my MAGA friends, my extreme right folks, Grok has said there is no evidence of a genocide. You in America cannot know more about South Africa than South Africans. You cannot just know more. You cannot sit here when you don't even know your own country. You don't even know your own country's history, but you then believe that there's some kind of genocide in South Africa. There's genocide happening all over the world. Why are you not rushing to bring Sudanese into America? Why are you not rushing to bring Congolese into America? They're being killed, they're being attacked, but they're not whites. So, and the argument here, imagine that you come to an African country, you've been here, and I believe that the simple fact that they don't even want to call themselves Africans is a problem for me. But I cannot I cannot pride myself as an American, or we cannot have Indian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Nigerian Americans, Ghanaian Americans, but we don't have white Africans. We don't have South African Africans that are white. We don't have Nigerian Africans that are white. That level of hypocrisy is not something that I'm going to ever support. If you look at France and you see the black people in France who are French people, you look at the UK, there are black people in the UK. You look at Ireland, there are black people. If there can be black people in European, heavily white only countries, why can they not be white people in heavily black only countries? And I'm not one to support any kind of hypocrisy. I think fair should be fair. But they're not even trying to call themselves Africans. They're calling themselves something else. So they exist on the continent. They are happy to be on the continent, but they don't want to be called Africans. They want to be called Afrikaans with a K. They want to preserve, and there's nothing wrong in preserving their culture, but should their culture exist in the grand scheme of things of respecting the whole continent of Africa, or is it an aside of the continent of Africa? How can you have a place in Africa where only people with a certain cultural heritage are allowed to stay there? And these are the same people that they want us to believe that they're being persecuted. Do you know the amount of powers you need to have to go to somebody's country and create your own country within that person's country and tell the person they're not even allowed to come into your own country and leave with it? Like, do you know the amount of power, rights, privilege that you need to have to pull what Orania is pulling in South Africa? This cannot be people that are being abused. These are people with a lot of resources and a lot of power. There's another video that I would like us to watch. I'll bring the video up here shortly. So I think Trump's pick for Attorney General, he used to be a TV commentator. I think he has gone back to doing the TV job, Matt Gaetz. Let's listen to Matt Gaetz' take on Orania, same white-only town in South Africa.
Afrikaners, they're descendants of Dutch settlers in South Africa. They've been immigrating due to concerns over economic instability, high crime rates, and political uncertainty. Between 1985 and 2021, approximately 600,000 white South Africans left the country, with 70% of that exodus occurring since 2001. We get why they're leaving, especially when we see rallies like this held by rising political figure Julian Malema.
The poor, the farmer. The poor, the farmer.
So what as much as that video sounds or looks repulsive and asking for the elimination, unaliving of the Boers, the Afrikaans, Matt Gaetz, do we just want to go back to the apartheid regime and see what was being said and what was being done? So this selective ability to say, look at what they're saying. They want to unalive the white South Africans. We could just rewind the clock 30 years. Not saying two wrongs make a right, but let's have context. White South Africans have killed millions and millions of black South Africans. It pales in comparison to whatever you think is happening to white folks, and it shouldn't happen. Everybody is unsafe in South Africa. It's not a racial thing. If I went to South Africa today, I would be unsafe. It's not racially motivated. Recently, not just as 2 years ago, Africans were shaming, the rest of Africans were shaming South Africans and calling them xenophobic for killing other Africans, that Nigerians, Zimbabweans who were there. And South Africans said they were coming there to take their jobs, they were coming there to marry their women. They did not want Nigerians and Zimbabweans and Kenyans. They were lighting them up on, just go ahead and Google black xenophobia or xenophobia in South Africa and see the untold stories that were happening to other black folks from other black African countries that were happening in South Africa. But see, you want to be a victim, like a liberal. You want to play victimhood. You want to act as if this is something that is only happening to white Europeans. This is exactly what was happening to other Africans, Zimbabweans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, Kenyans who were present in South Africa that South Africans felt were taking away their jobs. Let's keep listening to the guy who almost became our art teenager. I don't even know how it would have been worse with him if he had made the confirmation.
He sounds lovely. The Trump administration granted refugee status to 59 Afrikaners, citing claims of racial persecution and violence in South Africa. President Trump labeled the situation a genocide, referencing attacks on white farmers and land exploitation policies. The Episcopal Church ended its refugee support work with the U.S. government in protest, citing concerns over racial.
America has something called eminent domain. Please Google eminent domain and compare it and just say eminent domain versus South Africa and see what Google tells you. It's exactly the same thing that's happening. The reappropriation of land for public good, public usage. 7% of the population of South Africa is white and they own 80% of the land. There needs to be some kind of redistribution of this land. Else this problem is never going to go away. But you cannot make this conversation, you cannot tell the right folks on the right to be able to reason with this because it's the same power they hold and wield in America.
Racial justice. Joining us now, CEO of Orania movement, Joost Strijdom. So, Joost, what was your reaction to President Trump's welcoming of South Africans seeking refuge?
Man, thank you very much. Our first reaction was thankful. Our first reaction was thank you for treating this situation with the urgency that it deserves. You know, it was directly after the expropriation bill was signed, which means property in South Africa, specifically farms, can be expropriated without compensation. In my vocabulary, that is theft, that is stealing. So President Trump reacted to that. He reacted to, you know, all of the farm murders going on. And in that light, we were thankful. However, we had, I almost want to say, addendum to that. And we said, President Trump, thank you very much. Many of us would prefer to stay in South Africa. And what we need here is 3 words. We need you to help us here. Not necessarily with US tax dollars, but help us by supporting us with political recognition.
So the CEO, the chairman of the white-only town that we just watched in the previous segment, Joost, he's not trying to migrate to America. He's not running away from the genocide. He wants to stay at home. This is a white man saying that, most of us want to stay back at home. There's no genocide. They're not killing us. We want recognition. We want access to the US market. We want to be able to farm our products and sell in America, which is going to happen because Trump is going to allow the production and supply of white-only farms access to American economy and markets. This is going to happen. The Secretary of the Economy or Commerce is going to travel to South Africa for the G20, and this is going to happen. This would be the first African country that has access to the American market. And they're going to have the recognition that he's asking for right now through economic power. because they're going to be able to compete with the South African government because they have the backing of the American government. 4 years of the American economy will transform Orania to a powerful, rich, white-only country. Like I said, those people that they have shipped out to America, those are bums, those are hobos, those are not people that are, those are people that are going to be on social welfare. This is not farmers. This is the real farmer right here, Hughes. This is a person who is going to till the soil. He's not coming to America. He's not running away from any kind of persecution. He's not running away from any genocide. South Africa is his home, and he's going to fight to stay. Are you listening to what he's asking for? He's asking for recognition. He's not asking for charity. He's not begging for aid. He's not asking for dollars. He needs access to the American market. He needs America to recognize them as a sovereign territory within South Africa. And Trump is more likely going to comply. And Orania is going to be an independent country, the same way we have Lesotho, a country within a country, and Orania is going to be the next country in South Africa. This is the recognition they needed. They're not begging for aid. They're not a charity. They're not running away. He would have been begging that, please, Trump, come and get us and bring us to Iowa and give us land. He's not asking for that. He's asking for access to the US market because they're farmers. They have over millions of acres that they need to farm and sell their products in America. That is next level Marshall Plan. I have a bunch of videos on the Marshall Plan on how America giving access to its market has developed so many countries.
President Trump has put out a number of statements critical of some of the government actions that have made things challenging for white people in South Africa. What more do you think President Trump can do to provide that legitimacy that you seek?
Yes, yes. What we really appreciate is President Trump called us by our name. We are Afrikaners. We are a distinct people, a distinct group with a distinct language and culture. And he recognized us as a people. That's something that no one has done for a very long time, and we're very thankful for that. But people need a place, and in that light, we asked, give us political recognition, specifically, actually something that the South African government promised us back in the 90s. The Wali Musa Declaration said that the strive for Afrikaner self-determination is a legitimate strive. That was followed by multiple things, including the strive to self-determination, which was included in the South African Constitution, but never acted upon. And now we ask, if there can be a Trump declaration stating that a national home for Afrikaners is a legitimate pursuit, and that they will support it with their best endeavors, it could be a tremendous move forward for us.
So are they being persecuted or are they asking for recognition? Which one is it? Is there a genocide for white people happening in South Africa, or the white people in South Africa are demanding for recognition, autonomy, and self-determination? Which one is happening here? Because they're not the same thing. See, people fleeing from persecution cannot be asking for self-determination. They are fleeing, they're running away. But these are folks that are asking for self-determination, recognition. They are happy that Trump mentioned Afrikaners, right? They are happy that Trump is seeing them as a people, and he's saying a people need a place. So they're looking at Orania as that place. Keep in mind, Orania was born right after the fall of the apartheid regime. These people said, we don't want to mix with the Black South Africans. We don't hate you. We don't like you. We just don't want to mix with you. We've been here for 400 years. We have a right to this land, and we want to do our own thing. We're not Africans, because being an African means you're Black. And we're not Black, so we cannot be Africans. We are Afrikaners with a K. That is a distinctive people. And Trump is saying and telling us, and Matt Gaetz is supporting that there's a persecution and unaliving and genocide happening. How can people in the middle of a genocide be asking for self-sufficient, recognition, a statehood, when they should be fleeing? He should be begging for, he should be asking to be on the next plane out to Iowa, to Des Moines, to Idaho, to some farm state. Well, he's not doing that. He's staying put. He's happy. He's at home. He looks good. Look at him. Looks good. Looks healthy, well fed. Look at those bums that are coming over to America, those homeless people. Those are not farmers. Those are not people. Those are people that Orania will not even accept them. Why did Orania not take in those people? You have to have a certain code of you have to have a certain code of ethics to stay in Orania. So not every white person is accepted in Orania. You have to be white to live in Orania, but you need to have value. And when you don't have value, you're kicked out. South Africa has kicked them out. Orania has kicked them out, and America is accepting them. So America is accepting the lowest value of white people anywhere in the world. So it comes back to my original point. Immigration for white preference immigration over black immigration. Because right now, Trump is willing to accept the lowest of the lowest barrel of white folks that even the white people, white only community in South Africa will not accept. But America is expressively welcoming them, kicking out and calling Haitians dog eaters, cat eaters, kicking out the Asians. There was a protective status from a group of people that came from the African country of Cameroon that Biden had a protective status, same like the same protective status that Trump is giving to these white South Africans. Trump revoked that and sent those Cameroonian people back to Cameroon. The funny thing is, if you go to the State Department right this moment and check the status of Cameroon on the State Department's website, it's going to be red. And the State Department is going to say a warning to American citizens not to visit the country of Cameroon. How can you have a warning for Americans not to visit the country of Cameroon because it's unsafe? And in the same instance, you are repatriating Cameroonians that are running from persecution, civil unrest in Cameroon. You're sending them back there to go get killed, to go get imprisoned, while you're bringing bums, people that will not even be accepted in their own country, people that the entire South Africa is happy for them to leave. This is who you're welcoming. This is who you're dishing out the red carpet. So we need to know the history of America. America has always prioritized white immigration over colored immigration. It does not matter the substance, the value, the quality of the white immigration. As long as it's white immigration, it's always going to trump colored immigration. It's been your host for The Village Boy. Thank you. Stay subscribing, stay liking the page, and leave your comments if you do disagree. Thank you. Good night.